waiting for that to come up. And
Yeah, we're now live. Yeah.
now we're going to hit the well, look at this. This is Nikolay 7. I'm just going to bring myself into the picture for a moment, and I'm going to say, greetings, world, and greetings, 7 Spot. We are live, and
Hi, everybody.
it's going to be a wonderful day today because we're live from all over the place. I'm going to, first of all, bring the car in, and I'm going to say hi to Nikolay Pramatov, who is in Bulgaria. And in addition, you want to just nip into that window for a moment, lean down, Nick, and say hi.
No, I will. Hi. Well, basically, this is who you'll be talking to, but I believe the car is more important than my person. So I'll go behind the camera once again, and you guys are going to be focusing rather on the beautiful thing in front.
Perfect. I'm going to introduce our panel of experts. I'm going to start with our co-show host, John Minion, who's with the Northwest Kit Car Owners Group, and he's all the way in the dark in Evesham.
Nick Bradley.
And now I'm going to bring Nick Bradley in, and Nick Bradley is the official builder for ARL, Aardvark Racing Limited, in the UK with Superveloce cars. And in addition to that, we're going to bring in Aric Streeter, who's in the USA, in Michigan. You're in Michigan, aren't you?
I'm Michigan.
Hey, Aric.
And he's with Speed Street, which is his own entity because he's a driver, professional driver, and he's also a race instructor. Have I got that right?
Yep, that's pretty close.
Okay, we'll deal with that. And joining our wonderful panel of experts is Craig Harper of Harper Cars in South Africa. And I brought him along because he's got a few things to say about his own cars that he's got going, but he's also I'm going to say an expat. They share some similarities. Nikolay Pramatov and Craig have both spent some time living in South Africa. So without further ado, let's get into the show. I'm going to bring this wonderful beast in. Nick, I'm just going to let you do a description. Do a walk around. Tell us about your car.
Well, basically, I've built quite a few cars around in my life, including modifications of stock cars. And I've always found it very limiting when you're dealing with a street car, with a stock car, to try to make it go faster and look better, because they are made for entirely different purpose. They're made for going shopping and take my aunt to the market. And then you need to basically redo the whole thing, you know, working for a couple of years, in fact, 6 years, I used to work with High Tech Automotive, which is the biggest kit car manufacturer down in South Africa in Port Elizabeth, mostly working for the American market, producing Cobras, Lotus 7 replicas, namely S1, more recently GT40, which is a complete carbon copy of the original. In fact, they are allowed to continue the series from 171 number car onwards.
Wow.
And Noble M12. These are basically some of the cars that came under my, not pen because I was dealing with a computer, but basically the babies I used to be involved with for quite a few years, along with being involved in motor racing and all sorts of things. I'm not going to bore you with my personal life and CV. But bottom line is I wanted to make a project where I determine all the attachment points of the suspension. I decide where to put what, and unobstructed by any limitation and any regulations to try to get the maximum out of a car, and not being in a position to go buy a Ferrari or something. I decided to build my own cars, and I built quite a few. In fact, before the Lotus, I built a V8 trike with a twin turbo Chevy engine in it. You know, for those of you who visit my Facebook profile, you'll be able to see quite a few pictures there. And I enjoyed the beauty of South Africa and the freedom there to be able to build something from scratch and then just go and register. And basically by proving that you've done the right thing and then the vehicle is really roadworthy and capable of going on the road and going around the corners and stopping, it's sufficient enough that you can license. And you know, the moment the car is reasonable, or the vehicle rather, is reasonably well built, you should have no issues registering.
I was going to ask, what's the kind of registration process in South Africa? It's very strict in the UK these days with IVA, and it's like what we call an MOT test, but on steroids. You've got to have proof of everything. I just wondered what it's like in South Africa.
Well, I can only testify as for the trike, which I did from scratch, basically from buying the raw metal at the shops and bending and welding the pipes and bolting a V8 Chevy engine in it and going to register. I did it entirely from scratch. And because this car I bought already registered from a colleague of mine at High Tech, he had this thing, completely different car, obviously, but I sort of bypassed the entire process by purchasing a completely registered vehicle with number plates and everything, and then redoing it entirely. So this specific car, I didn't have to go through the entire registration process. I had to go and do an engine change because the original car came up with an Alfa Romeo 1800 engine, and it has nothing to do with this one. Obviously, this one is totally different car. But for the trike, basically, I had to present a bunch of invoices for the materials I've acquired along the way. I had to present invoice for the engine that I bought and everything. Basically to justify, to prove that I haven't stolen anything, which in South Africa is quite an issue. And then there was a commission, and the funny thing is, especially with the trike, I fell into no man's land because I went to the technical commission for cars, and they said, nope, this is not for us. You got to go for the bikes. Then I went to the bikers. They said, nope, this is not for us. You got to go. They don't know where. And ultimately, I just didn't have to go to any specific commission. I went to the commission that issues the VIN numbers, and the guys basically inspected the trike. And after I gave them the keys to drive around the block a couple of times, they were very convinced that there's nothing wrong with giving me VIN number and registering the bike. And pretty straightforward process, I must say. One of the things I enjoyed about South Africa is the unlimited freedoms, which you only realize once you go back to the Nazi camp called European Union. With its limitations, regulations, restrictions, and amazingly limiting, basically. In Europe, it's absolutely impossible to build something like this. I mean, especially with a 800-kilogram car with a 4-liter V8 engine, they will probably hang me on a tree somewhere. But in South Africa, it was pretty normal. It was pretty straightforward. And I mean, Craig can confirm that it's the country of unlimited opportunity. You know, you'll be amazed what sort of vehicles, you know, it's a strong word, of the things that you can see on the road there. Unreal. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Jump in for a moment. You mentioned to me, speaking of registration, that it was originally registered, what, in 1997, but this vehicle is in no way the same vehicle that was previously registered.
No.
Because it's been completely rebuilt.
This vehicle, as I sent you the chassis from High Tech, I got me a chassis from the S1, which was being built at High Tech Automotive in South Africa, which is a Lotus 7, which is longer and wider because obviously being meant for the American market. You know, in California, the guys probably eat better than England, and they just don't fit in.
It was the same with the Dax Rush, and I shouldn't say it, but that was a little bit wider, and they say it was black Germans.
I don't know what sort of block was Colin Chapman, you know, in terms of body structure, but I can imagine he wasn't a big chap. because these things were tiny, you know.
Yeah.
So
rubbing shoulders as well. Yeah.
Yeah. This thing is about 120 millimeters wide, I think. I'm speaking under correction, obviously. But I got the chassis from the high-tech S1 Lotus already, the bare chassis, which was used in production for matching the body panels to it. And this is the starting point. And as you can see on the picture, I was trying to figure out where to position the front axle, the rear axle, using pictures and everything. So the car was built from scratch, you know.
Yeah. I was going to say, and that's, you've got aluminium body panels on there. The front nose cone wings are fiberglass.
These fiberglass, yeah. The rear fenders, the front fenders, and the nose cone is fiberglass. Where the front fenders were built again by Hi-Tech a couple of years later, because I was running 227 17 tires on it, which is these are not the tires I used to drive the Lotus with. These are Mercedes rims that are fit to the car to be able to go through the TÜV process in Germany.
I was going to say they look like wide tires as well.
Well, this, I think the front is 205, the rear is 225.
205, yeah.
But originally, when I built the car, when I was calculating the suspension and the tire distortion and everything, I started off with the 225 17s, which we used to run on the racing cars in South Africa, semi-slick Bridgestone Potenza. And in fact, I still have the set with a couple of tires on it, which I will probably selling together with the car. So the fenders were built for the other tires. You can see it's a little empty here with this tire, but with the other tire fits like a glove.
Yeah. Can we have a close-up of those the front wings you've got there? I've had a couple of people ask. They're really interested in how you made them. And
Hi-Tech made them basically by taking original front wing from. You talk about the fenders, right?
The fenders and also the front wings you're running on the front.
The wings, the little winglets.
Yeah.
These little things. These are made out of stainless steel sheet metal, basically for deflecting the flow, because the idea behind is to direct the flow sort of away from the opening behind the radiator to create a low pressure area. Because in front of the radiator, I have a opening with the radiator being fully sealed around to create a high pressure area in front of the radiator. In fact, it made such a high pressure that on one of the test drives, the nose cone popped forward and flew up in the air.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it took me completely by surprise. But so with these little winglets, the idea is to direct the flow upwards in order to create a low pressure area behind here, which is also the purpose of these little deflectors here. So this area is supposed to be a low pressure area, obviously not having a wind tunnel. I can't quite visualize or prove that, but it should be because it works fine. Same is the purpose of these side pods, which are supposed to empty
close up on the side pods as well. They're in stainless steel as well, are they?
No, these are aluminium.
Aluminium.
These are aluminium. Stainless is quite heavy. Everything else is aluminium. But basically, if you look closely, you'll see I have openings here behind.
And that directs the airflow outward.
And basically these little side pods are supposed to empty or rather create a low pressure area here in order to evacuate the hot air from the engine compartment, because my bottom is completely sealed.
Yeah. Okay, got it. And that's why you don't need any louvers on the bonnet or anything like that, because it's all coming out from the sides.
Yeah. So all the air that gets inside the engine needs to be evacuated. And, you know, a lot of people think about bringing air in, but very few people think about bringing the air out. And also, I didn't want to evacuate.
I've seen that on a lot of forums, and they keep saying, my car's overheating. Well, it will do, because you're not getting the air out. And people put under trays on the front of their car as well. So the whole engine bay is just enclosed, and it just builds up under your bonnet where the rear where the front scuttle is.
And well, particularly it's true on Nick's car because his whole under tray is one. Well, it's not one piece, but it's a
completely sealed.
Completely sealed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a picture from here. Obviously, you can only see. I have even the underfloor sticking to the side in order to prevent the side air bleeding into the bottom of the car, because I have a massive diffuser in the back, which is supposed to be creating sort of like a low pressure under the car. And it's
I'm interested in that rear diffuser because it again covers the whole width of the car, and I've got a diffuser too. But just because of the droop on mine, it does some of my axle is exposed, and yours completely flat.
Well, you see, when I started building the car, I had all this in mind prior to the entire build. So my entire rear suspension has been built with the diffuser in mind. So you can see, I don't know how well you can see here, but the diffuser is quite empty. It's about a meter long. Can you see it, guys?
Not quite.
No,
it's just because you like.
It's a lot in there, Nick.
Well, we'll take your word.
I'll show you the upper end of the diffuser, which is inside my.
There we go.
Blimey, you've got a boot on it as well. We've got nothing on ours.
Yeah. There is the boot, and you can see actually this is the diffuser, and the diffuser is facilitating for the differential and obviously for the side shafts. This is basically the upper end of the diffuser. So the entire chassis is being designed with the diffuser in mind.
Right.
Very cool.
I'm just looking at your suspension setup as well. I did see some pictures.
Yeah.
It's all inboard shocks.
It's all inboard, isn't it?
Inboard, yeah, that's right. Well, I love the inboard
on the rear, though, is that and it's wishbone up front. Is that correct?
This is the lower control arms. Yeah. They are pretty much meeting 300 millimeter away from each other, right, both sides of the differential, because these are more or less the swing points of the inner of the side shafts.
Yeah.
So, look, obviously I've gone a little bit overboard because the entire suspension travel of such car is like 20 millimeter or 30 millimeter or something. But it's just, the principle. I just love to do the right thing. To have as long as possible control arms.
As well, it's all inboard.
Well, here's the thing that I like, and we haven't even got to this yet, but in talking to Nick, or having chats with Nick, one of the things he has is an anti-roll a suspension. And we've talked about how other manufacturers have what do you call the Mumford style suspension, but Nick's is borrowed from, or his predates some F1 technology that Mercedes.
I saw that. Yes, one of the first to get in there. And then,
If you look at my push rod, the link coming with an angle, it's attached on the upright. You can see that the lower control arm is not attached to any springing or shock absorber element. The push rod is attached to the upright. And as the upright is rotating, it's pushing the attachment point inboard.
Okay.
Yeah. And so by pushing the...
Almost like anti-camber compensation as well then, I would have thought.
Well, the camber entirely depends on the upper and lower attachment points, the upper ball joint and the lower ball joint, where this is entirely for vertical loading of the suspension, which comes through the push rods. And the push rods are being forced into the spring by the outer wheel, and obviously it's collapsing, it's preloading the spring higher at the same time.
I was just about to ask, can you open the bonnet and we can have a look?
Oh, it's another mess here, but there you can see. And what you see here is the stabilizer bar that is also linked.
And was that your own design?
Yeah, entirely. Well, this is what I do for a living.
I was going to say, yeah. So what kind of background have you got?
Oh, don't get me into that. How much time you got?
We got all night, Nick. Take your time.
Look, basically, it all started when I was 16 and I was only allowed to drive a 50cc bike, which I highly didn't like. And I got hold of a motocross 125 engine with a 6-speed gearbox. And I cut the chassis and I dropped into my little 50, the 125 engine, which was pushing the bike to 170, 180 kilometers an hour. And luckily,
I did the same with my bikes. I started off on a 50cc moped, Suzuki AP50. Went on to some other bikes, and I believe some of them had just reboring the engine, like from 150 to 175cc. So you couldn't really tell the difference. I did, obviously.
Yeah. Well, anybody standing on the side of the road can see the thing taking off. It's clear it's not a 50cc. By the time they realized that, I was very far away. So
yeah.
But look, this is the beauty of such an assembly what we're having here, because we're all flocks of feather. You know, everybody's gone through the same sort of life story, and we're all being bitten by the speed bug, and it's done. We're sick for life. It's not good.
I think for us it's the engineering perspective and what I call basic spanner work. I mean, my boys are both into mechanics now, and they do all the maintenance on the engine, which some of these young people coming up nowadays, they haven't got a clue.
Well, my son was, ever since he could walk, he would be walking around me, and he grew up on bikes and all sorts of noise and smoke making things, and naturally he ended up graduating from Turin Engineering University in Italy, which is sort of funded and sponsored by Fiat Chrysler.
Yeah.
So he got a very good education in terms of technical
mechanics
basis
and how things, how things work.
He's interested. In fact, in the background there you can see we're making an engine for his car. He loves the 190 Mercedes, and this is what we've got here for his 190 Mercedes. You can see there's I'll call it the breather helper.
Breather helper, yeah.
So my son is also in the game, and I've been, Well, look, what can I say? We live in a hilly area.
Yeah, I love the airbox that you managed to create there too. That's an interesting piece.
I was going to say, talk us through your engine, because I believe it's a Lexus, isn't it? V8
The engine started off as a Lexus. But basically this is the 4-liter that fits into the limousines, and it's rather mild engine. I think originally it comes with 160 horsepower. But if one is to dig into the history of this engine, the platform was basically designed for Toyota to participate in the Indy Series. It's a very, very strong platform. It's the main bearings are attached to 6 points each, 6 massive bolts each. It's a very, very well built engine. This is the first generation one, UZFE. And to give you the facts on this specific engine, I basically had to remove the intake assembly because a massive bunch of pipes which was giving unnecessary height to the engine.
I had to remove. They were quite tall, weren't they? Yeah,
they are. And also I had to remove the oil pan at the bottom, and I created another one, which is like, unfortunately, only the one who buys the car will be able to see it. No way I can show this.
Shortened sump,
It is an additional sump in front of the engine connected to the original sump with windage plates and flaps to manage the flow movements around the corners and acceleration and stopping. So to ensure
baffles, as we call them in the UK. Yeah.
As you've described, it's sort of a semi-dry sump.
Sort of semi-dry sump. And from there on, in South Africa, there was quite a good history in modifying cars. And I think Jude was his name. Craig can confirm that in Johannesburg. There's a Rich Jude, or what was the name of the guy?
Yeah, his name is Richie Jude. Actually, we met him on one of our recent runs.
Yeah. So these guys are boffins in camshafts, and I sent them my head not the heads, the camshafts, and they redid the cams. And from the original, I think they're running about 160, 170 degree cams. I'm currently at about 290. Now 220. They're running 219, 216, 219. I'm currently running 292 and 298, something like this, which gave me a massive top end of the engine. And this engine currently is running, I believe, Jim, I sent you the torque curve, right? Yep. You've seen it. It's at 2,500 RPM is doing 310 Newton meters all the way to 7,500 Newton meters. And my red line is about 8.5.
Wow.
Which for a 4-liter engine, it's like making an elephant run. Huh?
Yeah. Yes.
How is it on the street to drive?
Well, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. One thing is because it's a very light car, and for somebody who's not familiar with it, it very quickly empties every single gear. You constantly run into the limit.
If you're not familiar with that car, it will scare you.
Well, yeah,
that's for sure. But I'm saying, even if in an empty street, in a very big wide road, the moment you plant it in a matter of a second or two, you're into the rev limiter in a first, and then you hook second gear, and once again, in like 2 seconds, you're into the rev limiter. Then you hook up third. Once again, you need a rev limiter. And it's basically, it catches you all the time. You can't, obviously, once you start pushing it, it's very hard to drive smoothly if you accelerate hard.
Yeah.
I was, also the traction is quite an issue. Although when I finished building the car, I did basically the old-fashioned cantilever determination of the center of gravity. And to my surprise, the center of mass of the car was 48% to the front and 52% to the rear. The rear is heavy on this car.
Yeah, it took a battery back there too.
The battery is behind this passenger seat.
That rear is really heavy there. What rear diff are you running on that? Limited slip?
No, I do have the limited slip option, but the limited slip I didn't want to build from scratch because if you push the engine, it starts wildly spinning the wheels. And if it spins both wheels, it's pretty scary. At least now. Honestly, if you push it, at least you have a good chance of the one wheel keeping the back going in a straight direction. Where if you have the limited slip and you push the pedal to the floor, it will just
squirrel away. Yeah,
exactly. You will swap ends very quickly, and
it's always fun.
I do have the limited slip. It's a Mercedes. Basically, my entire running gear is a Mercedes 124. The uprights, the brakes, the calipers, pads, even discs, everything, bearings, everything is 124, which to the car guys is probably the most over-engineered car in the world.
Yeah, you'll have to talk us through your cockpit and your dash, and what gearbox are you running? It looks like you got some paddle shifts on the.
I have the paddle shifts built to the steering, but I'm not using it at the moment because I was busy developing a sequential gearbox, and the idea was to be able to use the sequential gearbox into this car. But I never got around to it. So at the moment,
because it's basically
it's there, ready for the sequential box to drop in.
It's ready for the sequential gearbox with the switches and everything.
So
but it's not functional at the moment. At the moment, I'm running a manual H-gate gearbox from a pickup Toyota.
5-speed?
5-speed, right.
5-speed, yeah.
5-speed. The ratios in combination with the differential being a Mercedes, a 3-2-5 ratio, with the fifth gear on this gearbox being 0.81 or something like this, should give me probably over 300 kilometers an hour on the top gear.
Yeah. I was going to say, that's fast.
It's quick.
Okay, well, I've never gotten to that.
Right.
If I can.
You just got to hold your foot in it longer.
What instruments are you running on the dash? They looked a bit like an AIM, what we call an AIM in the UK, like a digital.
Race technology. Race technology, yeah. The dash and data logger are race technology from UK. I bought it back in, I think, 2011, 2012. I bought it. It has.
I knew I recognised them. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And luckily, it has a GPS speed detection, as well as 4-speed separate for every single wheel. It has a
wow!
detection,
Okay.
It has I don't know how, I don't remember. I think about 30 channels you can record and inspect afterwards.
Are you doing anything? Are you doing anything with the individual 4 channels on the wheel speed sensors, like traction control or ABS at this point?
No driver aids to the car, no ABS, no traction control, no nothing. I deliberately wanted to leave the driver as the main factor in this car. I've never been a big fan of the driver aids. So yeah, no, none of this here. It has the facilities. I have the ABS sensors from the original Mercedes ABS. I can perhaps, if I find a place to put it in, put a ABS unit in to be able to, but I never wanted to. Sometimes locking a wheel can be desirable.
Yeah.
What ECU were you running then? Because if it can handle all of that, any idea?
The ECU is a South African-made Spetronics.
Yeah.
Fully tunable. Basically, if you have a laptop, you can download a map off of internet on the website of Spetronics, and you can plug in and basically play with every single parameters. And it's actually an ECU that allows you to have 2 separate maps, which calls for a complete different map for ignition, fuel, and everything, which I do have sort of one street map and one performance map.
Yeah, I've got a bike engine, Yamaha R1, and there's 2 maps in our. Well, it's not in the ECU because we're now running a Power Commander, which kind of piggybacks off the back of it. We have one map for the MOT to get it through emissions, and the other one we just flick it back onto for when we're on the road and that want fun. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but that's because you're in a so-called civilized country. In South Africa, you don't have MOT. So the map is only concerning the economy of the car. So yeah, to get back to the technical, I think I should mention another good feature of the car. One of the drawbacks of the Lotus chassis, please nobody take offense in that, is a rather softish chassis. It's a light gauge, but in terms of torsional rigidity, it's not a very strong chassis. And I try to a maximum degree to try to cure this. A lot of you guys run braces diagonally strapping the corners, but obviously with such an aggregate fitted in, I had to have a massive, basically open box here, which was unfortunately very flexible. So my bonnet is a structural member, is a stressed member with cone points employing into holes when you close the bonnet.
I was going to say, because I can see the braces on your bonnet, and I've never seen that before. Normally it's just a rolled aluminium.
That's because, it's part of the chassis. Once you close the bonnet, it dramatically increases the torsional stability of the entire chassis. It's like, I don't know if you can imagine an ice cream box. But
like a shoe box, would you take the lid off?
When the ice cream box is open, it's very flexible. It's nothing. But once you clip the cover on, it becomes stiff as a brick. This is the effect.
Interesting.
I've
All
never
of my
seen
ice
that
cream
before.
boxes are very
That's
flexible.
a great idea.
Sorry, many people talking at once. I quite couldn't hear.
Nick, I'd like to ask you a question.
Yes, I'm listening.
With the engine being so big and such a dominant feature in the engine bay, would you consider maybe stressing the engine?
Maybe what?
Stressing, making it into a stressed member.
Never been a big fan of that. We did this exercise back at High Tech Automotive. We had to send Cobras over to Australia to register, and in Australia the registration process is quite a stiff one, and they measure the torsional rigidity of the chassis, and we had to try and use the member as the engine as a stressed member, which called for massive vibrations coming onto the chassis. You know, every single bolt was coming loose, and the sheer gain of employing the engine in the chassis was absolutely minuscule. It was nothing. It was a good couple of degrees only increased the torsional stability of the chassis overall, and at the same time,
you probably wouldn't have lost a lot of weight either.
No, and at the same time, I would imagine it puts a strain on the engine itself.
And
we were building race cars.
Vehicle would be tough too.
On the race cars, we did basically run a big aluminum plate in front of the engine, bolted directly to the chassis. But these are race cars, you know. So I didn't want to do this with my car, and stressed engine. I don't know, aluminum block. To run a stressed engine, you can't use the original mounting points, which are to the side of the block. You have to try to catch the front of the block and the back of the block, or the back of the gearbox rather. And that calls for alternative attachment points. You know, you have to. I didn't want to make such a hassle out of that. It was much simpler to create a stressed member bonnet. And it gave me a reasonable behavior of the car. So
Thanks,
there's
Nick.
many ways to skin a cat, you know, basically what people are saying.
Always.
Yeah.
So
And
I had a question about, if we can go back to driving dynamics for just a second, on your front suspension. I was really interested in your description on that. So how does that the push rod arrangement going through the uprights actually affect the steering field? Do you get a lot of feedback in the steering?
It doesn't. It doesn't affect it. First of all, I'm running a power steering on the car.
Yeah.
But I did have a racing car which had no power steering, and I did the same thing. I had a racing Alfa Romeo back in the days in Port Elizabeth when I was living in South Africa while working at High Tech. And I did the same setup on a stabilizer bar. I had a massive stabilizer bar, and I ran push rods onto the uprights. And I was expecting to have negative effects on the steering, but I didn't for some reason. For whatever the reason, I never had any issues, because ultimately you're using your arm force to lean the car into the corner. And in real life, it does not make any, it didn't create any drawbacks or any additional forces or affect the feedback. And especially on this car, I'm running a massive caster angle. I think last time I measured was about 12-degree caster, which creates the shopping trolley effect. I can turn the steering. You can see the camber gain on the wheels.
Fall over like a Mercedes, I'm sure.
Wow. Yeah, it's definitely lifting.
Yeah. Wow.
You can see a massive camber gain. This is due to the caster, but one of the biggest benefits of the caster is that basically your virtual pivot axis pierces the ground quite a bit forward from the contact pattern.
Right.
You see my explanation? So basically there's a trail arm created by the virtual pivot axis between the upper and lower ball joint and the contact pattern. And the forces, the cornering forces being applied to the contact pattern, you actually feel like a resistance to the steering. And the human brain very nicely picks up exactly the amount of traction that's available on the tire by basically just feeling the resistance on the steering.
Yeah.
And the moment the resistance of the traction is lost due to sand, ice, or whatever, it basically springs immediately out due to the force on the steering, which increases the slip angle. So it's a naturally stable setup with running a big caster. Unfortunately, on the normal cars, if you just decide to go and make the caster massive, one of the negative effects that people are basically experiencing is that the steering arm height changes, because obviously the upright tilting backwards, if the steering arm is in the back, it goes lower. If it's in the front, goes higher. And this immediately goes into a massive bump steer behavior. And people report, oh no, I increased the caster and my car started going all over the show. It has nothing to do with the caster. It was the bump steer that they unknowingly added to the behavior of the car. But caster is always a good thing. And I always put as much as I humanly possible can. And it gives me a lot of benefits. In this case, camber gain into the slow corners and feedback to the steering of the level that you can never achieve with a street car. So this is basically the dynamics.
All right, very interesting.
Nick, I have a question about that intake manifold.
Yeah.
What have you done there? Have you created short RAM stacks, or what have you done there?
Big box. It's basically a big box. I do have a picture of the inside. At the moment, I think I'm using some sealant. I can't open it. But basically, it's a big box with a very short runners, which is basically the flanges and the runners inside the head, and a massive single throttle body here in this area here. You can see it going backwards. And this is basically the fresh air intake in front of the windscreen, which is normally a high pressure area in a normal car. And I'm not using
I take it it's on injection, yeah?
Fuel injection, yes, that's right. But the fuel injections are inside the plane.
Fixed velocity stacks? Like the Aric, on some of the bike engines, they used to flex up and down. Supposed to give you a bit more torque. I don't know how true that was.
No. I don't have any of this. Look, I'm running a 4-liter V8. What are you talking?
You don't need it.
I really don't need to gain any more torque.
Nick, how much torque is it making?
Guys, just so you should know,
310 Newton meters. 310.
Wow.
The torque is limited by the injector size, which I'm running the standard injectors that came from this engine. When I built the engine and I sent it to the tuner, I needed him to give me the maximum he can get from these injectors, where I'm running a slightly higher pressure. I think I'm running a progressive ratio fuel pressure regulator.
Yeah.
But my starting pressure is about 4 bar, contrary to 2.5 or 2.8 on the street engine. So I'm running about 4 bar, which gives me a little bit better performance on the standard injectors that came with the engine, but they are limiting factor. And with the current camshafts, you know, the airflow through the heads and the exhaust system that this engine is being built, having bigger injectors will probably give easily more performance. But once I had it to this setup, I realized I don't need anything more than this. And
I was going to say, I'm not even going to ask you about the MPG. We've stopped measuring hours on our R1 bike engine because it got down as low as 12 miles to the gallon at some point.
If anybody asks this, if anybody asks this question on this show, they're in the wrong show.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Guys, I'm just going to throw one piece of information out. You asked about the induction box and a lot of the materials and the design work that's in it. I've included in the description of this live stream the link to our video that we prepared in advance, which details and shows the airbox and all the suspension goodies, so you can have a good look.
Nice.
Yeah.
There's pictures. There are quite a few pictures. In fact, each one of you having a Facebook is more than welcome to send me any request of any. No information on this car is secretive. You know, I'm more than willing to share full details.
The only thing that's been up until this point, Nick, is this car is actually up for sale, and I haven't mentioned that yet. So, folks, if you're at all interested in buying a dream car, you can contact.
Well, I've put it many times to people. What's for sale here is the car, but not as much as parts and bunch of parts and an engine and suspension, as much as technology is here for sale. One can enjoy my free craziness in terms of all these suspension setups, and with the anti-dive suspension that I didn't even mention, my upper control arms with the heavy backwards tilt to counteract the braking nose dive, and because it's a very low car, if my nose dives, where do we go? So
into a hedge, probably.
Yeah. So I have a massive anti-dive geometry in the front, and it's quite a bit. I have a swirl pot, which is a typical Formula One style swirl pot for the water, which is meant to separate any gases, any vapor or air that comes into the system, to separate it into this swirl pot and bleed it back into the catch tank from the top of the head, from the top of the tank, and from the top of the radiator as well.
I've never heard of a swirl pot on the water, obviously for the fuel tank, but yeah.
If you go to Formula One engines, and there's a website called Gurney Flap. Flap. You can go to Gurney Flap, and there's a whole bunch of pictures there, and you can actually see quite a bit of freely available information in terms of technology. And in Formula One, look, the moment a car starts generating over 1G cornering force, it's a whole new ballgame. Your oil stands on the side of the engine. I was going
to say, everybody talks about swirl pot on your fuel tank.
Let me remove the back seat. I will show you exactly what I've done with my fuel as well.
Baffles in your oil sump, but no one's. I've never heard of a swirl pot on the actual cooling. But yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, and in the back, I have a stainless steel built tank. Let me grab the camera and some light. And the tank is built in 3 sections. You can actually see the welding spots where the inner walls are being welded to the middle section, where the walls are closing the tank into 3 separate sections, where the middle section is being gated in such a way that with side movement of the fuel, you always end up with the middle section full the most. And then from there on, I've drained the fuel into a surge tank, which is right here underneath. You can see. Yeah. This is the surge tank.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much guaranteed. Up until you have 2 liters in the tank, 1.5 of them will be in the tank, into the surge tank. And there's the fuel pump, and obviously with filters and everything, return lines and everything. So this is basically completely different from your street car. And this is a car that's meant to go fast around corners, and you will never run out of fuel.
I was going to say, because with the pressures that you're running, you absolutely need that.
Yeah, absolutely. Another nice touch, which can be handy to the 7 guys, is this my fuse box. it's the roof of my foot panel for the passenger.
Yeah.
And this basically one can screw up.
Oh, wow.
That's nice.
Daily.
Yeah, that's
Daily.
nice.
Mine's,
Well,
how is this
and
secured
then-
by zip ties at the moment? I might need to look at that.
I don't even want
Lady.
anybody to look under mine. No
and
way.
on this panel, on the top, I have all the connections and all the relays. At the bottom is basically only the fuses that you can have access to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in more necessity, this is basically
I wonder
where
how many times you spent under your dash on your back to figure out that you had to put it on a hinge to leverage down.
I know that was right from the scratch. That was right from the beginning. You know, I knew this is how it should be done. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
by the way,
Yeah.
this is where the battery is. Earlier, there was a question about
I was going to say, what wiring? I'm not interested. It's not my strong point. I have not got a clue.
Well, clean slate, basically, a very straightforward. I took it like I've never done anything before. You will see here a massive cable. This is a massive cable that has, I think, 16 identical black wires in it. They're all black, but
Brilliant
they have
idea.
numbers on them. They have numbers on them.
They're numbered. Yeah. And
I have basically 3 of these cables, one going to the back, one going to the front, and one going to the engine. And they all gather up over there. And I have basically, this is the one place here where, let me just grab
Where
the
all the
light
magic
because it's not seen. Yeah, junction box basically, where all the cables, I have a junction boxes. This is the junction box for the engine.
mm-hmm.
And
Okay,
then this
yeah.
is the junction box to the front,
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
Very straightforward. And then in the back, I have this one.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
And you can see the black cable with all the black cables arriving with numbers come into these terminals. I have numbers, fuel, reverse, birds, stop, lights, etc., indicator, everything. So very straightforward. And I built the entire electrical system.
Wiring is absolutely beyond me. But yeah, lovely.
It's very straightforward, he says.
Well, look, I don't know. You take it one. You know, in English there's a saying: "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time." You know.
I like that one.
I prefer the quote.
You're looking at the wiring as a whole picture, which I don't. You know, you just basically do one wire a day, or 2 wires a day. You know, and in a week you're done, or a month. You don't do the whole wiring. You know, you just take one little thing and you start like a little ant going up and down, and you make it work, and then you go to the next thing.
Like one circuit at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Very straightforward.
I prefer how do you make an elephant float? It's much easier. It's 2 scoops of ice cream and 7-Up, and you're done.
Grass can do that too. So yeah, I don't know.
That's a car. That is an amazing car.
It's a beauty.
And the brakes and front and rear, are they power assisted as well?
No. Brakes, you know, please don't laugh, but very straightforward again. Brakes are pure science in terms of numbers.
Mm-hmm.
You have, in fact, on the Woolwood side, this is my brake balance.
Oh, so you have a balance bar and you have Willwood?
Yeah, front and rear.
Yeah.
Basically, you start off with a very simple calculation. The radius of the wheels, put certain force, radial force, which is basically the weight of the car, 800 kilogram. You assume of 250 kilogram vertical loading on every single wheel. The friction coefficient on the tires to a dry tarmac is like 1, which means that at the contact pattern, they will be generating 250 kilogram backwards, which on 1/3 of the meter will end up creating 250, 1/3. So you're looking about 60, 70 kilograms per meter torque, which is, let's say, 700 Newton meters per tire torque. Then you're looking at the brake pads. You take the mean effective radius on the disc where the pads are operating. You take the median radius on the disc. The pads normally operate, you can get it on certain professional websites, but normally they run 0.3, 0.4 friction coefficient, which means that in order to generate stopping force of, let's say, 1 ton, you need to press them with 4 tons. For argument's sake, no, 2.5 tons. 2.5 to 1. If they're 0.4, so you press them 2.5 tons against the disc, and you get 1 ton stopping force on the disc itself. So with pure mathematics, you get to the pad pressure. You take the piston diameter, which is pure hydraulics, and you work out the line pressure, which normally in normal systems runs anywhere between 60 and 90 bar into the brake line pressure. And you go to the master cylinder, and you work out the diameter of the master cylinder with the brake pedal ratio, and you calculate that at maximum stopping force, let's say 1 G generated on the contact pattern of the tires, you need to have the driver's weight onto the brake pedal pad, which means that in order to generate the 1 G stopping force with the wheels, I basically had to stand on my 1 foot on the brake, which is nothing. You know, each one of us can stand. It's like 80 kilograms, and I'm perfectly comfortable, which calls for a very comfortable drive, because if you generate 1 G stopping force, your body weighs 80 kilograms forward, and the moment you put your foot on the brake, you support yourself on the brake pedal, and you absolutely don't need assistance to do that. And the problem with the brake boosters is with the various revolutions of the engine, which can be downshifting or anything, the assistance of the booster can change. And it's very difficult to precisely control the stopping power on certain edge. Because the moment you feel
under your foot on the pedal,
exactly. And I've always been problematic to me if I'm braking with the maximum stopping force and my body is trying to fly through the front window and I'm hanging on the belt, and at the same time I'm trying to very gently touch on the brake to not outbrake myself. It's not optimum. So I calculate maximum stopping force with the with the weight of the driver, and basically you're standing against the brake pedal, and that gives you a maximum stopping power. That doesn't get any better than this. And professionally, I've done many brake systems for many cars, and I've always been doing this formula, and every single time the driver come back to me and they say, Nick, this is the best braking system I've ever driven in my life. And it's actually very simple, very straightforward.
Wow.
And you say this car is up for sale?
Sorry?
And you say this car is up for sale?
It is, yeah.
I'm just what I have done.
You'll have to post where you've advertised it.
I put a link in the description, part of the video, so that if anybody wants details, rather than to get into prices and say ship here, they can just go.
Price, I can say the price right now. I'm trying to. Obviously, you know, you can never start from the lower price, but ultimately, if I end up getting about 35,000 euro for it, I'll be very happy to let it go. So I don't know how that converts to the local.
It is a supercar slayer.
Yeah. So I would start the advertising about 37,000 euros, so we can eventually negotiate down, and depending who's paying for the shipment and all those kind of things. But like I said, it's not as much selling the car as much as it's selling technology. You know, one can go and copy a lot of features out of this.
Yeah, I think that you just touched on it right there. There's going to be a lot of people who are interested because they want to be able to use the technology in something that they would like to develop, and that there's a lot.
And obviously, part of the sale comes a free consulting with me as far as the car goes. Obviously, you know, I don't want to put myself in a situation of somebody building cars and I start going a free consulting on every single system in the car. But yeah, I'm more than willing to help anybody in terms of technical questions and explaining in details for every single thing what is the mind behind and what is the idea and why is the thing done in such a way. What is the gain and what is the benefits and everything.
Yeah, perfect.
Can I make a remark about that boosted brake situation?
Yeah.
I'm with you 100%, Nick. You know, these modern cars have boosted brakes, and the pedal's so light you can stop it with a big toe. But if you're in a racing or sporting situation, it's too easy to lock up. And the other thing is that the reaction time of the booster is slower than you'd like it to be. So if you need to get off the brakes, there's a little bit of a delay for the vacuum to decay away. So you don't have the amount of control of the brakes that you have with a straight direct system like you've got. So absolutely, boosters are not for sports cars.
Absolutely.
No, not at all, not at all. If I can share a little experience of myself, I used to run Craig. It will probably sound familiar to you. I used to be a race engineer for Terry Moss Racing. You know, Engine Extreme Racing. Terry Moss should be familiar with. From the championship. And in the Polo Cup, we had a situation where obviously due to the limitations, they were supposed to run boosters. And in a couple of consecutive applications of the brakes, in fact, my favorite driver is from Cape Town, Miguel Pasquale. You probably heard the name too. He was running out of brakes. You know, you pump on the brakes once or twice or three times, and then there's no boost. And then you start basically by the third time, you're using brakes with no booster, and these are completely different brakes from the very first time you touch them. So it's a disaster. Booster is absolutely not for racing cars.
And there's one other thing. I must just share this with you guys. I don't know how much time we have here, but this might amuse you. One of my early owners of a Harper built it himself, and he put a turbocharged engine into the car with a brake booster, but without the non-return valve. So he went off to the racetrack. He got to the end of the straight at 1 bar boost, and the pedal was rock hard. Like, I mean, pumped up rock hard. Nothing happened. And then, of course, it started to pull a suction, and he locked up all 4 wheels and looked very surprised.
I sort of felt where that was going when you said no, they turned it up on a boosted car. It's like it's only one way to go. Yeah.
All good. Lovely. Thank you, Nick.
If you guys have any other, I don't know. I'm forgetting half the stuff here. You know, it's
I know
quite a few other.
You see, the thing about it is, you're such a treasure trove of information for mere mortals such as myself and John. It's just like you're spoon feeding, or you are a whale, and we are offering you tiny spoons of questions. And yet, some people actually know what's going on.
I'm the same with you, Jim. It's where do we start? Because it's such a wealth of information, as is Craig as well. But
look, Craig is being humble there behind the camera, but he's building racing cars, and I'm sure he's pretty much fully familiar with the entire thing that I'm talking here about. And
absolutely.
Oh yes,
and like I said,
yes. You're speaking my language. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's the land when one can experiment. You can play and you can experiment. You can do whatever you want, and it's such a beauty in South Africa. And I'm just pretty much my mind is set on getting rid of the house here in Bulgaria and getting back to sunny South Africa, and Cape Town is.
You guys will be getting together soon, I'm sure.
Why don't you move next door to
Nick?
Why don't you move next door to Craig?
Yes.
Well, my daughter's going there in February.
Okay. Oh, I'd love to meet you in person.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's coming probably. Yeah. So.
And Aric, do you have some questions at all? Across,
Yeah, I was mostly interested in the suspension. I'm kind of a suspension guy, so that was most of what kind of captured my interest on the car, honestly. And it's a very interesting concept.
Yeah, I agree.
Any details you need to ask about?
Yeah, well, I did kind of have a follow-on question on the camber compensation, or
yeah, that's me too.
That kind of thing. So how does that work with the rear, right? So you're not doing any active camber compensation or any similar, I guess, mechanism to match the front behavior. How does that affect the chassis dynamics?
In the rear, you don't have turning wheels, so the only camber compensation you can do is for the difference in length between the lower and upper control arm. Right. Where in my car it's quite dramatic because the lower control arms, as you saw on the car, are quite long. They're meeting about 300 millimeters away in the middle of the car, where my upper control arms are relatively short. I think about 250, something like this. Mm-hmm. And they are already tilted upwards. So any movement of the wheel up calls for a pulling the upper end of the wheel inboard, which immediately creates camber, which is on roll. Right. Not that this car has any, and especially with the active effect on the spring rate with steering angles, which is obviously done in the slow corners, because in the fast corner you're not turning the steering too much. But then again, the car has a very low center of gravity, and it doesn't have much of a body roll. And I have static set up. I think I'm running about 3-degree negative static.
For the front or the
both front and rear.
Both. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't want to go. Also goes back to my racing experience. You don't want to go a very big static camber because it affects the braking down the straight line. Because if your wheels going straight are not laying flat on the ground, you're not utilizing the contact pattern for braking and
the full grip.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then
you
obviously have quite a bit of camber gain by design in the front. Yeah.
But you see, this is where my anti-dive geometry comes. I try to avoid the dive. In fact, I've never been in front of the car while I was braking at high speed, but I would imagine it's hardening substantially to a degree where it can maybe even lift slightly the front of the car, negating the static camber. In other words, straightening the wheels, if I can put it that way. This is how I try to combine between every single aspect to try to achieve the maximum results, because it has to be, everything has to be together.
Now, did you do any computer modeling of the suspension at all, or was it mostly from your prior experience?
I did both. I work on SolidWorks because work-wise, professionally, I'm a suspension design engineer, and this is what I did for the last, I'd say, 20 years. Mm-hmm. And we used to do computer simulation on SolidWorks with the GT40, with the Daytona Coupe, with the Lotus, with everything. So in my case, in this car, I did run the computer simulation to basically just confirm everything that was already in my head. Please don't ask me numbers. It was a long time ago. Yeah. I don't remember any specific numbers. And I've been doing it literally till the last couple of months. I use SolidWorks quite extensively, and this helps me a lot to more or less know where I'm standing in terms of dynamic behavior.
Sure. That's
Nick?
Great.
Wow.
What sort of
Wow,
rising rate, if any, have you got built into the springs and front and rear suspension?
At the moment, I'm not aiming at raising rates because I don't have obviously downforce. It's the raising rate of the springs is basically depending on sine and cosine of the approach angle of the push rod and basically the shock absorber rod. You know, depending on what sort of angle they are to the rocker arm. I'm sort of trying to remember the terminology, but at the moment, I think I have pretty much below 90-degree approach of the push rod to the rocker arm, which is at the moment, is, by the looks of things, about 75 degree. You know, if you look at with swivel point and attachment point here, and then on the shock absorber, it's very dense.
Turn your lights on.
Yeah, let me grab the light.
Show us under your skirts,
the shock absorber is at the moment running about 90 degree. So no raising rate at this time.
Okay.
It's,
almost a falling rate, I would say.
Maybe. It's pretty much linear. Not exactly, because this is over the 90 degrees. So from here on, the push rod is only going to harden it will effectively shorten the arm with the movement. So it will harden. But then again, the suspension travel on this car is so minuscule, so you can't really talk about proper raising rate. You know, if that was an off-roader where the wheels are traveling half a meter, then it's a different ballgame. You know? But on this thing, it's not exactly. It's more transferring the force into a convenient angle, rather, in terms of packaging.
And
also
packaging is always a big one.
Transferring the forces through a link always allows you to have numerous holes on the link and having various suspension setups. One of my last projects I mentioned earlier, Austin Healy, I ended up designing a completely different chassis and suspension for it. And because the car was meant for the enthusiastic crowd in UK, which enjoy so-called track days, I did a setup on a push rod suspension where you basically only unscrew the bolt of the one hole in the link and put it into another hole to do a track day, which gives you a harder suspension and shorter travel with the same exact shock absorbers. Where if you finish with the track day, you just move the push rod link one whole larger radius, and immediately your car with the exact same shock absorber becomes softer and a longer suspension travel. So you enjoy the ride home. And this is basically.
I was going to say, Craig, you did a similar thing on your Cobras, the suspension adjustment.
No, the Cobra is very conventional. The Harpers have a rising rate rocker.
Harper, that's what I'm thinking of, yes.
For that purpose, yeah. So the reason I like the rising rate is you can run a relatively soft setting, if you like, for the street. But as it compresses, it gets harder, and then that gives you it stops it from falling on the floor. So it gives you a bit of both. Bit more weight, but less unsprung, you know. So.
Definitely. Because it's all inboard.
I don't quite have so much of a downforce like you have on your cars, so that's why I wasn't really after the raising rate shock absorber. And you know, but in a project like this, you do one thing and you take it to the road, and you test drive it, and then you decide what to do next. And I never felt the need of going any more complicated than this. But like I said, it has to do with the packaging and with where my stabilizer bar is and the entire.
Nick, I had to dominate the questions. I got one more for you, though.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Your ground clearance is whatever your ground clearance is. Is your car going to hit the floor before the suspension hits the bump stops? How does it, or the end? How does it work?
It's pretty much in the same place. on the straight roads. It will definitely be on the bump stops before it grounds the plate on the bottom. I have a wear plate at the bottom with epoxy impregnated plywood plate at the bottom. Basically, it's meant to be rubbing against the road in certain places without any damage. So it will definitely hit the bump stops before it bottoms on the floor. But it's pretty close. I'd say 10, 15 millimeters. It depending on the right height I adjust it at the moment, because I have various places where I adjust the right height. If I adjust the right height of the springs, obviously it remains in the same place. But if I adjust the right height of the push rods, it changes the bottoming place. So how long is a piece of string?
How much ground clearance have you got?
Sorry?
The ground
clearance. What's your street setting, if you like, for ground clearance?
Well, at the moment, I'm running 70 millimeter in the front and about 100 at the back.
Quite a bit of rake. Quite low as well.
Yeah, very low.
That's about what you get on an MK. That's about right.
Well,
in Europe, they have the so-called slipping cops, these big humps in the road. Speed bumps. And I wanted to be able to go over them. I don't want to get stuck on every single one of them.
Yeah.
So, and also it doesn't, it's a pretty low and pretty wide car, and you don't exactly suffer too much by riding it just a touch higher on the floor. The engine is sitting very low anyway. The entire chassis, everything is very low to the ground. So I can afford to have 100 millimeter in the back without feeling like driving the Eiffel Tower around.
Thanks, Nick.
And you actually get some downforce out of your diffuser?
Nobody knows that.
Looks good, though.
How do I know? It's supposed to look
as you say, it does look good. I don't care what it's doing. It does look good.
That's what I put mine together. It looks great. People go, wow. And I have no idea if it does anything.
Look, one way to determine this is to have sensors measuring the ride height. And then you log the ride height of various speeds with diffuser and without the diffuser.
Yeah.
And, one could probably run such an exercise to learn what?
Exactly right.
Would you remove the diffuser if it wouldn't generate a lot of downforce? Or would you? So I built the diffuser. It's supposed to increase the sticking to the ground on high speed corners, and it behaves great in high speed corners. I'm quite happy with the car. So,
or the option you could do is you could put a great big whopping wing on it like Aric's.
Yeah, I have full front and rear topside wings on my car, but
I have another name for the wings. The wings can be observed as parachutes, basically, because.
Definitely.
Downforce creates drag.
They do for sure.
Depending on efficiency, you're looking at the ratio anything from 1:1 to a very efficient downforce package. The most efficient downforce package is probably 0.4:1, which means if you have to create 1 ton downforce, you'll be creating 400 kilograms backwards. And these are downforce packages created by massive budgets in wind tunnels. So I would imagine simple guys like us the best they can do is 1:1. So you push the car down 500 kilograms, you're dragging it backwards 500 kilograms. It's not. I don't want to do that.
I was going to say, Jim, we did a live stream about the TMC costing. And they fitted front splitter and then a wing on the back. And they reckoned on the race cars, they were getting first time out 2 seconds a lap quicker.
You have to put that in context, though, because that was 1980s, right?
It was back in the 1980s, to be fair.
When you're driving one of these types of cars, you're driving a brick through the air. And
true story. That's in this car, you see, there's I call it cheating in downforces. which is basically if you create a flat bottom combined with wider floor than the body itself, such as what I have here, the flares on the bottom to prevent the side air from bleeding to the bottom of the car. If you try to run flat bottom combined with a diffuser in the back, which will inevitably connect the vacuum behind the car to the bottom of the car to create certain downforce, this is a win-win situation because this is one downforce package which does not create drag. If anything, diffuser supplies air to the back of the car, reducing the drag, because you know the bigger the surface area of the back, the more drag your car will be creating. A lot of people are mistaking that the front of the car creates drag. In fact, it's the back of the car that creates the biggest drag because you're drawing behind yourself a massive negative pressure bubble, and the diffuser is bleeding.
You get like a vortex of wind coming up against your rear boot, and literally, as you say, dragging you back.
Yeah.
So I've done my best to run a flat floor with as big as possible diffuser to get the benefits out of that. But from here on, anything additional would have created a drag. Unfortunately, I very much like the original Lotus 7 long slopey fenders. I don't know what you guys call them.
The clamshells.
Clamshells, yeah. You say clamshells.
Clamshells, yeah.
Lift
but
maker.
Unfortunately, they create lift. They create lift.
Yeah, a lot.
And
they call those ground effect.
yeah. So as beautiful as they look, I didn't want to go for that.
Yeah, that's another discussion. We can all get into the big fight. Do you want to clamshells or cycle wings? So or do you want to lift?
Well, they look beautiful, I must say. You know, if I run a 1600 that will never go over 120 kilometers an hour, I'll probably do that.
Yeah.
But on this car of mine, you know, the brave driver will probably be able to push it to 300 plus kilometers an hour, and you don't want to have anything trying to lift the car off the ground.
Yeah. What a car. Amazing. Nick, you've given us an hour and a half, almost an hour and 21 minutes so far. And
I just been brilliant speaking to you, Nick, and looking over your car. And I've learned quite a bit.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nick. This has been absolutely fabulous, and I'm sure that your batteries on your phone are about to expire.
No, I charged it quite heavily before that, but it's running pretty low. Yeah.
But I think it's time for us to maybe just say thank you, and if folks want to find out more, I put the connection link for your Facebook page on the description, and we can go from there. In terms, I don't mind being the intermediary if people need to get in touch with you, but what can I say? What a treasure trove of information. It has been absolutely fabulous.
I was going to say as well,
Well,
good luck with the sale. Whoever buys that is going to be absolutely over the moon.
Yeah. And I also want to say thank you to Aric Streeter for joining us from Speed Street.
Yeah, my pleasure.
From Harper Cars, and of course, as always, John Minion with Northwest Kit Car Owners.
Yeah, just a hanger on. Can you put a link up to Aric's Speed Shop as well?
Oh yeah. You can. I'll, if you don't have it, Jim, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd like that. Yeah, absolutely. Send me that link, and
we can leave all sorts of information in the comments of this video underneath later on.
I put in as much information as you've got for me, and we'll just take it from there.
And obviously, Craig Harper, because you've got his details as well.
I'm going to have all of those things put into the details.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, guys, let's put a wrap on for now and just say
thank you very much.
We look forward to seeing you at 7th Spot, and thanks again. Have yourselves a great day.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers for now.
Cheers.
Ciao.